Hi everyone, it's Judy, and this next tutorial that I want to show you is the merry-go-round, which is going to be the 2nd February block. I highly recommend you go to units. You can either read the directions off the links there, or you can print it out. I like to print them out because I make notes for myself. So let's go over the directions. I'm more visually active, so I like to see what we're doing. So I'm just going to kind of go over what I do. So, first thing it says to do is you need 2 pieces of 4 3/4 by 4 3/4. You need 3 pieces of 4 3/4 and 4 3/4. Now, they have these defined as blue and green. So one of the reasons I like to print my instructions is because I will take a little arrow and I will designate whatever fabric colors I am using. So for instance, in this case, these 2 are my green and these 3 are my blue. Now, the next thing it says to do is work on your background fabrics. I'm choosing all light colors, all the same color for the background fabric. 5 pieces of 4 3/4 by 4 3/4, 4 pieces of 5" by 3½, and 4 pieces of 2" by 2". So, I have everything cut out, ready to go, laid out. Now the next thing it wants you to do is draw on the back of your 4 3/4 by 4 3/4 an X. And what I've done is draw just like the picture shows. First I did an X, and then I even drew in the 1/4" seam, so I have something to follow. And you're going to find on these blocks that have a lot of little squares, you have to be very, very accurate. Can you see those X's? As accurate as possible with your seams. Everything's based on a 1/4" seam, because the smaller the pieces, the more chance there is for your block to come out a little bit smaller than normal. So I thought this would be a good time to just go over for new people that don't know this. There is something called a 1/4" foot. I have a bunch of them. I love to try different feet. This one has a guide on it, so it kind of glides along your fabric and keeps you on the 1/4". This is a 1/4" foot. It's clear and see-through, so you can see your fabric underneath it. And this is another type of 1/4" foot. So far, I don't have a favorite, so you just have to kind of see which one you like. Try them all. So I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next step to save time, and then I'll show you what I did in a minute. Okay, so I have sewn along the X. There was my X, and I'm using thread that matches because I'm actually going to use this block in one of my quilts. I don't know if you can see it better on the other side. So there it is. So now the directions are telling us to cut along that in between that sewn line. Let me get my cutter. I'll be dipping back and forth. So it wants us to, it says cut along the drawn lines, and then again vertical and horizontal. So it wants us to cut here and here, but it also wants us to cut that again, and I'm going to go ahead and draw these lines in. They intersect, so that's why it's showing the red X in the middle. It doesn't want you to get confused and cut those too soon, but I'm going to go ahead and draw them on now so I can finish this step. Okay, so it says cut in between these lines, so here's what I'm going to do. Let me move some of this out of the way. I'm standing off to the side because it's the best way I can video closely. So it wants us to cut this way. Okay. And then turn and cut in between the other stitches. So this way, right on in between where you've just sewn your 1/4". And then where I just made that X after I have sewn, it wants us to cut again. So I want you to cut on that X, and I'll show you what happens when you do this. It's kind of tricky. It's geometry pretty much, and I was never good at that. I don't know if any of y'all are good either, but maybe the visual will help. Okay, so I'm ending up with all these little triangles. Okay, and we're also going to cut, and you can do this however, you can put them together, or you can cut them individually. One there, and one there. There we go. So what you end up with is a bunch of these little tiny 2-inch squares. So if you press them out, and I'll do that in a minute, you press them out, clip off these little dog ears. I'll do it with my rotary cutter. Be careful if you use a rotary cutter because you can have accidents. I usually do a scissor right before I press. And then I'm going to take this to my iron and I'm going to press them all open. So that's that step. Hopefully I didn't confuse you. It's very hard to explain as you go, so I'm hoping that showing you will make more sense. So hang on and I'll do the next step. Okay, so I have finished parts green with the background, and it makes a total of 16 2-inch squares. Now, you're going to see tips from people that say square it up. Whenever I have a square, I like to check it because accuracy is really the key to quilting, and the only way to get accurate is to keep trying and practicing. So these are supposed to be 2 inches by 2 inches, so when I square it up, I just take my little ruler and check it out, and I'll turn it different directions because sometimes you'll have a straighter side, and I check it. And if there's a little teeny bit sometimes that needs to be trimmed off, I'll trim it off. If there's nothing to trim off, I leave it alone. So in other words, this one, because they're always going to come out, you know, a little weird, but they'll look okay next time you sew them together. This one looks a little big to me. Let's square this one off. So I'm going to find the straightest edge I can. And if you have a better way to do this, please let me know, because I love to learn too. So my little ruler, 1, 2, I see a little piece sticking out. I'm just going to trim that off, and then I'll turn it some other ways. I'm just giving you guys some tips because I see a lot of these types of things in the questions because we're all at different levels, and new quilters are trying to learn too. And if you have really good tips, please share them in the comments because, you know, we could really use them. So I'm going to go through and continue to square those up. But in the meantime, this is what I've just finished. I've pressed them open, and there's little corners that you want to trim off. They call them dog ears. So I repeated the other ones. It says repeat green and background fabric for another 8 HSTs. Now I'm going to go on to the next step off camera. Repeat 3 or more times using the blue and background fabric. So this was my blue. This is my background. So I need to do all of this with these 2 fabrics. And I will be right back. Well, I have all of my squares cut out now, and the directions are telling me to lay out the block in sections. So the first section I'm going to lay out looks like this. Follow the pattern on your instructions. I know my fabrics look like they're all the same, but they're a coordinating fabric. One has a little more yellow. So in my case, I wanted my blue, or my darker color, that will be up here. I want it to look more pinwheely. So I've got them all laid out. And my plan of attack is 2. So these 2 together, these 2 together, these 2 together, these 2 together, like this. And then, once I've done that, and I've sewn them together this way, I'll sew them crossways. There's another way you can do it. You can sew them this way and just have a long seam in the middle. But whatever works best for you. I'm going to go ahead and get these sewn together, and then I'll come back with the next block. What it will look like sewn together. Got everything, just that one little block done. And I wanted to show you, before I sew these together, I kind of did a chain stitch, they call it, where you just keep a stitch running. But to make your seams fit flatter, when I press them, I press opposite directions each piece. So this seam is going this way, this seam's going that way, this way, that way. Then when you sew them together, you don't have that big bulk because your seams are flipping different sides. So it's just another tip. I'll probably give that to you each video because I know not everybody is going to watch every video. But so now I've got these all sewn this way, and I'm going to flip them over and sew them all together this way. I'm going to work on the next part of the directions. I've finished these blocks with all the 2-inch squares, so we're going to go here. And what that instructs us to do is take the 5 and 3.5 inch rectangles, line those up, and then put your 2-inch squares here. You should have 4 squares left, and we'll show you what to do with those. Pay attention to the shading on here because if you want your colors to come out properly, I know, again, my colors look the same, but there's a little more blue in one of my fabrics. So just pay attention to the shading, make sure you lay them out right. Let me get that done and then I'll come back. I know there's a lot of you folks out there that are also learning to sew as you're learning to quilt. So even though some of these things might be obvious to us experienced quilters, I'm trying to keep you all in mind. So I just wanted to go over this block with you and how to construct it. We've already put these together. These are, they were 2-inch unfinished blocks. When you sew them together, they're 1.5 inch. And then you have this piece and these 2 blocks. So the easiest way is sew these 2 blocks together first. Okay? And then you're just going to flip it like that onto the bottom and sew it that way. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that you understood that. I'm sure most of you do, but there might be someone out there that's brand new and needs help doing this. I'm going to finish this up and then put the whole block together, and guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to measure it because that's always the scary part for me, to see if I'm even close to 12.5 by 12.5. So we'll do that in a second. Okay, I finished the block, and I told you I was going to try and see if we got the right size, or if I got the right size while you were watching. So here we go. It should be 12.5 by 12.5. And it is, let me see here. It is more like 12.25 by 12.25. So I am 1/4 inch off, which happens, most of my blocks come out that way. I don't know why. No matter how careful I am, I use different quilting feet, 1/4 inch feet, but could be because I press the tar out of it. Maybe it shrinks a little bit. I do not pre-wash my fabrics. I don't like to do that. So it is what it is. It's done. This is what it looks like. And don't forget to post a picture of yours when you're done. I can't wait to see them. Have a good one.